That's recording, Richard.
Lovely. We're ready to go, Chairman.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Richard. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Policy Panel. I'm Councillor Sam McCarthy. I'm the chairman of the panel and will be chairing tonight's meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom over the internet on the Council's YouTube channel and will also be available to watch afterwards. To begin with, there are a few matters of housekeeping. With the exception of the Democratic Services Officer advising us, would participants all please mute their microphones unless they are invited to speak. I will ask for each item of business to be presented and then ask each member of the panel in turn if they wish to ask a question or comment. At the end of each item of business, well, there's only the one substantial item tonight, I'll ask each panel member in turn to confirm audibly how they wish to vote. We may have a break at 7:30 p.m, subject to the progress of business. I'm now going to ask each member of the panel to introduce themselves. I'll start with myself. I'm Councillor Sam McCarthy, chair of the panel, and I represent Shrub End Ward, and I'll move around like this. So next, Councillor Martin Warnes, please.
Hello, I'm Councillor Martin Warnes, representing the Beer Church Ward and vice chair of the panel.
You add Councillor Christopher Arnold.
Temporary unmute through the space bars not working. Councillor Christopher Arnold, Rural North Ward, comprising everything from Dedham right across the Great Tay.
You, Councillor Phil Coleman.
Good evening all, Councillor Phil Coleman, Mile End Ward.
Councillor John Jowers.
Councillor Jowers, representing Mersey and Pipely Ward.
Councillor Derek Loveland.
Yes, Councillor Derek Loveland, Tiptree Ward.
Thank you. And Councillor Lee Scordis.
Lee Scordis, Old Heath, Hive and Rowhedge.
Thank you very much, panel. And I will now invite the officers and guests to introduce themselves. And I'm just going to go across as I see it on screen. So I will start with the Democratic Services Officer. Richard, if you'd introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Next, Rosa Tanfield.
I'm Rosa Tanfield. I'm the Group Manager for Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you. Next, Rory Doyle.
Good evening, everybody. Rory Doyle, Assistant Director, Environment.
Thank you. Gillian Belsham, please. Think she may well be away, not a problem. Dan Gascoigne.
Yep, Dan Gascoigne, Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you. Mandy Jones.
Mandy Jones, Assistant Director, Place and Client Services.
Thank you. Stephen Collis.
I'm Stephen Collis, Parks, Contracts and Volunteering Specialist.
Thank you. John Marsh, please.
Hi, my name's John Marsh. I'm an APSI associate working for the council at present.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, Councillor David King, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's very kind of you. Skulking in the background, Cabinet Member of Business Resources, here to assist and observe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lovely. I think that's everyone. Item 2 is substitutions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Arnold.
For those of us who are not in the know, could we please understand what APSI actually is, please?
John, would you like to come in on that, please? Rosa?
I'll come in, yes, if that's okay. So John is contracted to the council through APSI, which is the Association for Public Service Excellence. And I'll talk about that at the agenda item which I'm presenting, and we'll introduce John in more detail at that point.
Thank you. I think that's important because if we've got members of the public following us outside of our own organisation, they too may have wondered. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Rosa.
No problem, and a good point raised there. Thank you. Item 2 is substitutions. We haven't got any this evening. Item 3 is urgent items. I'm not aware of any. Item 4 is declarations of interest. If anybody has a declaration of interest, could they please raise their hand? No, looks good. Item 5 are the minutes of the last meeting. Rather than go around and get everyone to vote, if that's okay with you, Richard, we'll take nods and thumbs up. Everyone that was here, but the minutes all good? Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Agreed, Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. Item 6 is have your say. No members of the public nor councillors have indicated that they wish to speak. Item 7 is public initiatives. I'm afraid we don't have any of those either this evening. So we'll move on to item 8, the substantial item, which is grounds maintenance contract options. This evening, our action required is to agree to the scope and aims set out in this report and to agree the terms of reference for our panel in undertaking this review as set out in Appendix A. So over to Rosa, John and Steve, please.
Thank you. I'll lead the majority of this agenda item, but I will be supported, as I said, by John and also Steve Collis as well. So what this paper does is just sets out to the policy panel a recommendation from leadership that the policy panel undertake a review. And the review is in regards to the council's grounds maintenance contract. Now, the grounds maintenance contract is one of the largest external contracts that the council has, and it's due to expire in October 2023. And therefore, now is the right time to be looking at that contract and the future operating models after that contract ends, in order that we can make sure that we undertake due diligence, considering all the different options, and undertake the planning and notification processes that are required for such a contract. Now, in order to undertake that review, which officers will lead, supported by councillors here today, we have looked at our options, and what we have done is contracted the Association for Public Service Excellence, and in particular their solutions team, hence why John is joining us today. That external support and external recruitment of John enables us to have an external reference, somebody with expertise in this particular field that can look at beyond Colchester and across the UK at all the different types of operating models associated with grounds maintenance, can challenge us as an organisation on what those operating models may be, and help guide some of the conversations and this review process. So the report sets out how that will be achieved. And we have also signed up to APSI's Performance Network. And what that does, it enables us to benchmark our service against those nationally across the rest of the UK who are also signed up to that network too. To help the policy panel to start this review, we've set out 4 aims that we would like to achieve through this review, which again is for discussion. Those 4 aims look at how the future operating model might be delivered. And those 4 aims are as follows. So a community asset-based aim. So creating an operating model which creates an environment and conditions which support community-led action, something that's already being achieved across the whole of the council and is a continued ambition going forward. The second is demonstrating exemplary management of the environment. So ensuring that we can, again, continue with our priority of sustainability, biodiversity and ecology being at the heart of whatever operating model we may choose. Thirdly, in considering the economic climate that we're in, ensuring we have budget control. So robust and demonstrable savings with cost certainty about what that future may hold with whichever model we choose. And fourthly, something that's transformative, something that matches the council's ambition and how it can deliver its services in the 21st century. So attached to this paper in Appendix A is an outline in terms of reference, as it were, in terms of how this policy panel can undertake that review. And it sets out those aims, as I've explained, and then a number of workshops that we can undertake as a panel. And not just with this panel, we're also looking at undertaking workshops with key stakeholders that we work with, including officers across the council where grounds maintenance covers this area of work. And the review, just for everyone's information, is not just the contract with ID Verdi, it's also looking at the scope of other work undertaken by the neighbourhoods team as well. So things like Castle Park operations, countryside teams, trees maintenance, etc. The timetable which we've included looks to arrange a meeting of the panel week commencing the 18th of January, and at that meeting we'll review the aims and objectives as set out in this report and make sure that we all understand what those aims and objectives are, to be really clear. And then we'll have a briefing on the current state assessment and benchmarking, which is work that John is already undertaking as part of the work that we've commissioned him to do. And then start to think about those outcomes. What do we actually want to achieve, rather than considering the operating model to achieve them? We don't want to come up with a predetermined decision. The second meeting will then to be analysed the feedback from that workshop and the other workshops that we'll be undertaking, and then start looking at what the possible options are. There's scope for a third meeting, dependent on the information, questions and additional information that you as a panel will require, culminating then in your panel meeting on the 3rd of March to agree what those recommendations are then to Cabinet. So that just brings me to the end of that paper and an outline of that proposal. I'll just introduce John now, just so that he can give you a brief overview of his work experience. You can understand why the council has brought him on board to help us with this piece of work.
Hello. Sorry, John.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Yes. Right. Yeah, just to say, my name's John Marsh and I'm working as an associate for APSI, the Association for Public Service Excellence. APSI is a not-for-profit body that is owned by its local authority members. And there's around 300 councils in membership across the UK, and that's in all 4 nations. My personal experience is I've been in local government since 1982 in a number of roles. I did work for APSI for a time in the early 2000s. I did a stint at Keep Britain Tidy, where I was local government director. Before moving on to Nottingham City Council. That was my final role in local government, where I was head of service there for 9 years, covering areas such as the public realm, waste and park, street cleansing. So I've got a lot of experience in this field. I did take voluntary retirement in March of 2019, and since then I've worked on a number of projects such as this across the UK for APSI on an associate basis. I'm happy to take any questions on that. I think Rose has gone into quite a lot of detail tonight about the kind of objectives, but the 2 things I'd like to say is one of the key for me is to find out in establishing the objective what type of service is actually wanted, rather than say who carries it out at this stage. Nothing's ruled in, nothing's ruled out. I have been working on, as Rosa mentioned, the current state analysis, and also building into that the kind of benchmarking where Colchester sits under a range of indicators around parks and open spaces, horticultural services. So, Chair, unless anybody's got any questions for that, I'm happy to continue. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Did anyone have any questions so far? We'll let John continue. No, as you were.
Right. So that's it. Sorry, Chair.
That was it, was it?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay. Did anybody else want to speak officer-wise before I open it up to the panel to speak? No, I think we're probably okay. Councillor Jowers, I saw a hand up.
Yes, you did, as it flickered on and off. Yeah, it does raise quite a lot of questions. I mean, on the surface, it seems fairly simple and straightforward. You know, we want the best value for money for a service which has done us pretty well over the years. Probably there's 1 or 2 of the issues. Just raise a few questions. You know, community-led action. I get worried sometimes. Does that mean community-led paying? Who pays, and the savings that we're going to make on this? I'd like, obviously, you know, the increased detail. We will see more of that. There's also an option of bringing the service in-house. And I think we ought to look at that a little more closely, because I, amongst many others, aren't too brilliantly fond of Alumno, I believe it's called, and various other borough homes or various things where we've outsourced to different areas. I thought we did them much better when we kept them in-house. I know that's an archaic old fossils view of how things possibly should go. And I'd also like to see how this relates into a devolution agenda towards the parishes. And I would suggest that we bring in Cultural Association of Local Councils, or EALC. It is a reasonably big contract, and I think that certain issues, I mean, from my point of view, I'm getting an awful lot of grief about breakwaters that have been left derelict on Mersey. I think we're getting an answer to it, but we need quicker reaction to some of the problems that we have. And I don't necessarily want to see them being passed down. It's okay if you're in the borough, if you're in the borough wards, you haven't got a problem having to deal with parishes. So basically, it's a good idea. But there seems to be an awful lot of sort of catchphrases, creating an environment and the conditions to support community-led action. You know, we're going to have to unravel a few of these, just see exactly what they mean. And I've just put forward a few suggestions. Yeah, I'll vote for it. It makes tons of sense. And as you said, it's quite a big contract. But we've got some pretty good guys work for us. Just out of interest, are IDVRD local?
Rosa, did you want to comment on that?
I'm going to bring Steve Collis in on this. He's our specialist and contracts manager who works in my team and has direct operational management. He can give you a bit of an overview in terms of IDVRD as a contract. If I can, before I hand over to him, just going back to the points that you mentioned there, Councillor Giles, I think all the points that you've raised are valid, and I would like us to be able to explore that in those workshops. You know, quite exactly what you've said, those aims and objectives quite high level at this point. What does that actually mean, so that we can then understand what the solution is, and rather than coming up with a solution such as in-house, let's look at what we want to achieve, and then John can help us with those options of how we can deliver them. And that would be the intention of what those workshops that I've outlined in Appendix A will help us achieve. So if I can I pass over to Steve just to give an overview of IDVRD as an organisation, who they are and where they're based.
Very elegantly put, Rose. Of course, I'd love to hear Lottie Collis. What
Thank you.
Evening, Mr. Councillor Jarvis. IDVRD, we started off with a company called the Landscape Group, who then were taken over by IDVRD, who are a French company who have taken over another number of other companies within the UK. The staff have been tutored through a number of services. We've still got 2 people working for them who used to work for the council many, many years ago. So we've had the same staff and some of the same management, but under different organisations for a number of years. The contract at the moment is a performance one, so they need to be doing things on certain times. When the grass gets to a certain height, the grass should be directly cut at them. But it usually works out the grass is cut every 2.5 to 3 weeks throughout the borough, like the highway verges and housing areas, like the big avenues down at West Mersey and along the seafront gets every 2.5 to 3 weeks cut. As an organisation, like any company, they have their ups and downs, but we do try to closely monitor them to make sure they keep to standards. This year has been a bit of an interesting year with COVID and being able to get out and about and check people. But from general reports, it has been seen to be going reasonably well this year, unless other people can tell me otherwise at the moment. Does that answer your question? You want any?
No, I'm just saying that I would agree with it. It's been done. You did very well this year, and thanks very much for the answer. But I'd much rather it were local, not French.
It wasn't French to start with. It was English, but it got taken over.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Thank you, Councillor Jowers. Councillor Coleman, please.
Many thanks, Chair. As somebody that spends most of my time working on grass, as well as sports halls and other equipment, I can remember the initial takeover from IDVRD in 2016. I saw a really improved service, and I think that's been sustained over the last 4 years in my experience. A couple of things I'll just throw in. I agree with Councillor Jowers. I think whoever we appoint needs to be proactive and not reactive. There's an awful lot of work that needs to be done and can be done on a proactive basis, probably fed from the community. I'm sure we can engage with the community to find out what needs to be done. But also, and probably my biggest point, we're looking at greening the borough. More trees, more planting, more green spaces. So for me, whatever we do, we need to look at a service that has the ability to cope with that expansion, deal with the Northern Gateway Sports Park, and base our planning on certainly a greening of the borough with a lot more trees, etc., and making sure that the company can actually cope with any of those expansions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coleman, and agreed. Councillor Scordis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, whenever I've contacted Steve and ID Verdi, they've been very proactive and they've reacted well, a lot better than some management companies that I know. So they have been good. I still think there's some joined up work to be done. So, for example, on recreation grounds, the bins are emptied by ID Verdi, but the dog poo bins are emptied by Colchester Borough Council. So I've seen it before where a Colchester Borough Council van is following around an ID Verdi van. And it just seems that maybe we missed that on any contract that we did with them. So I think any joined up thinking, if we are pursuing this or we carry on the contract for the next 2 years, would be much more prudent than it is at the moment. But other than that, happy with the service, and they're still plugging away in the middle of lockdown. So good to see.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scordis. Councillor Arnold, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I don't have a particular problem with the service sort of experience as it has been over the last year or so. There's one, this is an opportunity to sort of pass on a very, very stiff piece of ear bending I got from a constituent many years ago who was a small business operating in exactly this sort of area. And his grief was that because he was he ran a small business, he was completely incapable of sort of getting any work from the borough in this sort of field. And it may well be, in fact, I suspect it is the case, that the people that Verdi or whoever else we went to, given the way TUPE works, would actually be individuals locally who are employed through that company. But I would be doing my constituent a disservice if I didn't mention that I think perhaps we ought to look at whether there is scope, and this might be particularly on the more isolated pieces of ground that the borough owns, and there are some out in the villages where we might actually go to somebody locally and say, this is yours to look after if you can deliver the entire range of services on it. And then you would have some sort of the opportunity for a partnership to develop with a local community. I mean, what we have at the moment, if we've got one team doing everything, I'm sure there are economies of scale there, but I don't think the opportunity to build that relationship with the local community comes out of that. The other thing I'd be interested to see reviewed is whether we do actually get the same level of service across the piece, because my impression is that some of the jewels in our crown receive ever such a lot of attention, but you look at other local areas that the borough manages and they are not done nearly as well. Now, that could be that we're, that is something that simply requires an adjustment from members through management, like and bring the standard up. But it does trouble me somewhat that we do rather better, for example, at the Avenue of Remembrance, than we do on some council-owned spaces elsewhere, which are actually more used because they're parkland. I'm not going to go down the parochial route, but certainly if we were giving evidence to sort of in the weeks to come, I could identify the places that I've got in mind, but I won't. Those are my thoughts about what I've got in front of me. But as for whether or not we ought to do it, yes, absolutely, we ought to do it, because it is such a large contract. And when it comes up for renewal, we should be looking at the way it works and whether it gives us what we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Arnold, and some great points raised there as well. Councillor Martin Warnes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Of some empirical evidence to support what Councillor Arnold is saying, and I too don't want to go into naming the areas, but there has been problems around some of the standards that have been delivered to some Pacific areas, which required me as a local member to take a close look at the contract and to engage supervisory intervention, which basically, once that came around, the standards were broadly addressed and have in a broad scope, not actually sort of reoccurred. So that does give some weight to what Councillor Arnold has said. I would very much like to see a service that not only gives a voice from a management perspective, but gives a voice to the end user and also the actual workers in terms of standards and also, the actual specifications that the contract seeks to actually deliver. And I would ask that when we come to look at the cooperative public sector mutual option, we reach out to the Cooperative Councils Network, which is a network that has tens of councils in it and has a lot of experience at providing cooperative style service provision. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Warnes. It would be quite good to bring in EALC and the Co-op network if we possibly can within the timeframes that we have. We want to get a broad spectrum of opinion and ideas. I don't see any more hands up. Did anyone else wish to speak at all before I take it back to the officers? No. Okay. Okay. I mean, we can obviously move on to the vote and agree the scope and terms. Rosa, was there anything more you wanted to add? I'm just curious as to when, beginning of next week commencing the 18th, we're looking to schedule a workshop. When are we planning on doing that? Because obviously many of us sit on other panels. I think there's group meetings next week and all sorts.
We can contact you all offline to find a suitable date and time where this first meeting can go ahead, and the future dates as well, penciling in a third date if we need to, because as you say, if we want to bring in some external people such as the Cooperative Council Network and the EALC, it might be that we bring them in on that third meeting. So we can take that offline and contact councillors to agree those dates, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Just everyone needs to make sure we're signing into our emails every day, as challenging and frustrating as that is at the moment. Okay, I think we're all sort of singing from the same hymn sheet. We want community involvement, we want engagement. We understand that they're providing a good service for us, but there's opportunities to explore tighter partnerships between that and the neighbourhood teams, between ID Verde and the neighbourhood teams, or perhaps a different avenue. Did anybody else wish to speak at all? Councillor David King, I can see you kind of coming onto the camera and then disappearing again. Have you got anything you'd like to add?
I'm enjoying listening to the wrestling between what we'd like and probably the practicality that lies ahead. My perspective will only be, like everybody else, we want the very best service we can get for the communities we serve at, but of course we want it at an acceptable value. Just one other observation to offer, Chair, thank you, would simply be, as Councillor Warnes would know, that the procurement process itself does include a social value element. So to the extent that we can take account of the benefits that come from local procurement, for example, and jobs and procurement, that's in the equation. I wish you luck collectively with your deliberations. I'm glad to hear, lastly, that our current supplier is, and I think rightly from my experience, regarded as a good deliverer of service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Okay, we have got to agree 2 points this evening. So it's to agree to the scope and aim set out in the report, and to agree the terms of reference of the policy panel in undertaking this review as set out in Appendix A. Richard, do we need a named vote on this?
Chairman, yeah, I'll just quickly run through a quick name vote for you. So if I'll just call out the councillors' names and you just indicate whether you're for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Arnold.
This is on both.
Yes, sorry, on both recommendations.
Thank you, Richard. Agreed to both.
Councillor Coleman.
Agreed both.
Oh, amended as discussed.
Did you get that, Richard? Agreed both.
Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Jowers.
Agreed.
Councillor McCarthy.
Agreed.
Councillor Loveland.
Yes, agreed.
Councillor Scordis.
Agreed.
And Councillor Warnes.
Agreed.
Thank you. It's unanimous, Chairman.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Rosa, Steve and John, for that. And we'll speak to you offline about arranging a workshop meeting next week. Lots to do in a short space of time. So yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you. Cool. Okay, so that moves us on to item 9, which is the work programme. There are a couple of bits to mention. Richard, are you happy to go through those, or would you like me to?
I'm happy to raise a couple of points, Chairman. For the next meeting, the item scheduled is we have the local government restructure item scheduled. The white paper for this has not yet been published, and I don't think there's any sign that it's particularly imminent. So we would suggest that the committee may wish to move that back to its work programme for the next municipal year. In terms of what that could leave you for the March meeting, obviously you will have the grounds maintenance work coming back for you to sign off on the recommendations. We could also suggest that, as you will probably be aware, the panel made recommendations through to Cabinet about heritage interpretation. Those recommendations were not accepted by Cabinet, but when that decision was taken, Councillor Julie Young made a presentation to Cabinet, which they thought you might be interested in receiving to give some context to some of the work that's going on. So we could look into scheduling that for you if you were interested. And there is also the potential of maybe slightly further down the line, some work arising from the scrutiny panel who are doing a review of the bus services. They anticipate possibly making recommendations through that may result in some work for the panel in some of the policy areas around that, but that will need to go to Cabinet in the meantime for send off. So that's not something that we're in a position to schedule at this moment. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Chairman.
No, that's excellent, and thank you very much for that. Is everyone happy with that, with the changes made? If anybody has any questions, please do raise your hand, but I think that's quite good. Councillor Arnold, of course.
Of course, Chairman. What could you mean by that? I was talking with Owen Howells, the committee clerk who normally takes this panel, earlier today, and he mentioned this public transport study. And I have to say, as I approach the end of my 26th year, I have a feeling that we've actually spent more time doing transport and bus studies in Colchester than not in the last 26 years. We're very much a case of there'll be another one along in a minute. But to be serious about this, I mean, for a start, I'm a bit puzzled about why it's happening this way around, because the people we ought to be talking and getting information from to do a review of bus services, surely the public, and consulting the travelling public is our job, not the scrutiny panel. So I'm a bit confused by that. But I wanted to make a positive suggestion back up the line and down again, if that's what it has to be. Some years ago, a parish councillor in Great Hawksley that I was very sad to lose because she was very hard working, actually got a number of parents and a significant number of pupils, secondary school pupils, involved in meeting bus companies and sorting out what would work best for all the children, secondary school children who had to go from Great Hawksley, which is only, for those who don't know, it's just over 2 miles from North Station, so it's not a long way out, to their various secondary schools across the borough. And she actually organised this, but for the first time we were getting information about what the travellers at that time of day, either sort of before 9 o'clock or sort of 4 o'clock or plus or minus in the afternoon, wanted from the bus companies. And the bus companies, to their credit, were very responsive. Now, in all the exercises that the Borough Council has run over the years, I don't think I have ever seen information coming in from that sizable contingent of public transport users, the teenagers. And I would strongly suggest that if we are going down that route again, and if it's not too late because the scrutiny panel have already done that bit, we make a point of engaging, perhaps through schools across the borough, with those teenagers and find out what it would take to get them using the buses more at the times that they travel. Because if that was successful, we could actually have some impact on congestion caused by parents taking their children to school by car. And I confess that in my day as a parent as opposed to a grandparent, I did a certain amount of that. But that, I think, is something I would really like to see come out of a review for the first time ever of Colchester's bus services. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And I agree completely. And I think that's well within our scope for the consultation stage, where we do need to engage secondary school students. Councillor Warnes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add what Councillor Arnold is saying, I would, there's a need to reach out beyond existing users, because certainly in the ward I represent, when there used to be the service number 8 that used to be service 8A, 8B, 8C and 8D, it used to various routes, and that meant that people that were not as able-bodied as others had the opportunity to be able to catch a bus into town, and that has since residualised down to a bus that just travels through the main drag and comes off of the main drag by about a quarter of a mile, disenfranchising a large part of Monkwick estate. So I think there is a need to also consult those that might be potential users as well as those that are currently users, because I do believe a lot of passenger use has dropped off over the years as commercialisation has taken a hold and routes have continued to residualise. And don't forget, we have a pretty proactive policy on community transport, which is yet to be brought to life.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Warnes. Councillor Jowers, please.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think Councillor Arnold's made a good point, but what I would say is don't do it in the very near future. I mean, at the very earliest, I would have said September, because the change in patterns of usage, actually some people's probably reasonably founded fears of public transport, the whole thing is in chaos and it's likely to stay that way for quite a long while. So my view would be that don't necessarily just replace the local government restructure white paper with that. It's just the wrong time to do it. Actually, on the local government restructure white paper, don't hold your breath, because if you do, you'll need to be like the best deep sea diver the world's ever seen. Ain't going to happen, not for some while. What I would like to see would be something consequential of February the 1st, which would be to have a review of our approach to the local plan. And that, I think, would be quite an important issue for us to just delve into a little bit. After the February the 1st, of course, because no one could predict what on earth is going to happen then.
Richard, is that thanks, Councillor Jowers. Richard, is that within our scope? Can we potentially bring that? I mean, we would have to get approval from the Cabinet for that first, wouldn't we? As you well know, Councillor Jowers, how this goes. Councillor Arnold, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I put the hand up because I felt obliged to actually support Councillor Warnes, because of course Great Hawksley was at the other end of the 8A, 8B, 8C, whatever it was, and one of the problems that we faced. And I think it's another issue, and I don't want the debate on this tonight because we're supposed to be doing it sometime in the future, was that buses took so long to get from Beerchurch to Great Hawksley and go back again that the bus companies would cut them out in order to get them back on schedule. And then you'd get people waiting at one end or the other for a bus that was never going to turn up because it had turned round in the middle somewhere. So he's absolutely, again, Councillor Warnes is absolutely right that that we need to catch the people who've given up on the bus service and find out what it would take for them to come back. Just picking up what my colleague Councillor Jowers said, people will have heard me say many times in the past few years when the review of Section 1 at least of the borough plan has been going through, we did not used to do it like this. There used to be a measure of agreement between all members of something called the local plan panel, which met in what I think I'm going to call seclusion rather than private, which sounds as though there's an opportunity for sort of all sorts of things going on, which there weren't, because all the sort of deliberations were recorded and published. But we did have this attitude that we were in it for the borough, not in it for the patch that we happened to be representing. And of course, in that time, many patches change hands politically anyway. So you might find yourself sort of batting, or a group might find itself batting for an area that three years previously had been in the control of a different group. So you didn't go into it on a political basis. You looked at what was best for Colchester. You understood what the chances of success with particular policies were, and you actually produced the borough-wide policy, which was agreed across the borough. And it has caused me some grief to look at the way that we used to do it. And I know this is because I've been here even longer than Councillor Jowers by about 7 months. The way we used to do it was civilized, an agreement between ladies and gentlemen, and we could present a united front to the public and say, this is why we are doing it here, because it's best for the borough. And it would be wonderful. I know you can't put the genie back in the lamp or whatever the expression is, but it would be wonderful if we could find some way of getting back to that attitude where the review of the borough plan was supposed to produce something which was agreed on by all of us as being best for the borough. And it is a very long time since we've been there. That, I feel, would be worth looking at.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Arnold and Councillor Jowers. I think perhaps maybe myself and the group spokespeople could take this offline and see where we can fit in as a panel with this, perhaps. It turns out again that the work programme seemed to be the substantive item again tonight, because we do get discussing various things. If everyone's happy, I will conclude the meeting there. I think we've covered everything, and we'll speak offline about organising a workshop for next week. Is that okay?
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Lovely.
Happy New Year to you all, and a healthy one.
Likewise. Good to see you
Chair,
all.
Chair, can we just agree the changes to the work programme? We just have a formal indication the committee are happy with what we've discussed.
Is that Nate, or can we put thumbs up?
Yeah, lovely.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much.
I noticed you exercised your casting vote there, Chairman.
Yes, I did, yeah. Thanks ever so much, everyone, and I'll speak to you soon.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you. All the best.